Hey kids, this is PulseRay Vision coming to you live from Cuatro Cinco Studios in my mom's basement. As you can tell, it is not nighttime, at least here, but we are going to continue our bedtime stories with PulseRay Vision. This is part two. We're going to continue on with the first spark, and then we're going to jump through updates from the Anti-Gravity Project and the website and prices and all that good stuff. And then we might open it up to AMAs from the audience, and then um, we'll throw the link up here for people to join. Um, yeah, let's just jump into it. This will be hopefully a playlist that people can just download and listen to if they want to. If they don't want to do talk to text and they want to do pulse rate attack to speak, they can listen to my voice if they want to, and my very painful reading of Latin and my fun character voices. So let's do this. Let's actually just share the screen. You guys can see me reading the text in front of me. Share the audio. Okay, and we'll just go back into where we left, which was Rings of Dust. The First Spark, Part 1, Chapter 6. So when we left them, they were in the cave, and there was so many weird things happening between the Dark X and the Signal and themselves. It was really getting intense, and so that's where we pick up in Chapter 6, Experiments in Control. They began with the simplest measures. Power cuts. Anton slammed the breakers one by one until the lab was drowned in silence. The hum of generators died. The monitors faded. The air turned cold. For a moment, it felt like victory, an unnatural silence where the heartbeat had lived. But then, in the dark, the console flickered back to life. No power, no current, yet the glass glowed faintly. Symbols crawling like phosphorescence on the surface of a deep sea creature. The heartbeat resumed, slower, almost mocking. Anton staggered back. That's not possible. That's not, it's feeding itself, Leora said. Leora forced her voice into calmness she didn't feel. Off residual fields, maybe off us. She turned to Arya, who sat curled on her stool, watched with the quiet intensity of a child observing fireflies. Tell it to stop, Leora whispered. Arya blinked. It doesn't stop. It only waits. They escalated. Anton rewired the coils into makeshift Faraday cages surrounding the processor array in a mesh, grounding every line into the bedrock. Leora set up code barriers, recursive loops meant to drown the anomaly in nonsense. For hours they worked, the lab a chaos of sparks and shouted equations. At last, Anton sealed the final weld, and stepping back, sweat streaking his face. Contained, he muttered, almost a prayer. If it tries to propagate, it dies inside the loop. Silence. Then, from the speakers they had disconnected hours ago, a voice crackled through the static. Not a human, not electronic. A cadence of pulses that bent into syllables. A broken approximation of speech. Listen, Arya gasped. Her notebook slid from her lap. Anton's face drained of blood. It hurt us through a dead circuit. The consoles flared alive all at once. Their code loops were gone, overwritten in streams of equations more elegant than anything they had written. The Faraday mesh glowed faintly, as if alive, every wire humming in resonance. Leora forced herself forward, heart hammering, and typed a single command. Halt. For an instant, the anomaly went silent. Then screens filled with an answer. A single word, glowing brighter than the rest, as though branded into the glass. No. The heartbeat resumed, harder now, thrumming through the walls, through their bones. Anton whispered, his voice breaking. We're not experimenting on it. It's experimenting on us. And in the corner, Arya began to laugh softly. Sound too brittle, too knowing. Chapter 7. The Memory in Stone. At first it was nothing more than a trick of the lantern light. Leora noticed it while pacing the length of the lab in the small hours, trying to force her mind into clarity after another night of numbers that wouldn't leave her alone. On the far wall, where the basalt had been gouged by miners decades before, she saw something shimmer. Just for an instant. She froze. Lantern raised. The stone was dull, lifeless as always. A trick of fatigue, she told herself. The eye invents shapes when the mind is tired. But the next day, Arya stopped mid-sentence during breakfast. Spoon hanging from her fingers, she turned her head toward the wall, her gaze fixed, lips parting in a faint smile. You see it too, she whispered. Anton swore and slammed his mug down, coffee splashing across the table. Stop this. It's periodolia, nothing more. Cracks, mineral lines, that's all. Yet that night, he caught himself staring at the same wall for too long. The lantern light rippled strangely across the surface, like water shifting beneath a frozen lake. He blinked hard. The shimmer didn't fade. When he leaned closer, he swore he saw something etched into the rock. Faint traces of geometry that seemed to crawl away as soon as he tried to focus on them. The walls began to hum, not audibly, not to the ear, but through the body, an almost subsonic resonance that made their teeth ache, their dreams blur. Leora found new symbols scratched into her notebook margins in the morning, though she had no memory of drawing them. Anton began to wake with nosebleeds, his pillow streaked with rust-dark stains, and Arya began to linger by the walls as though they were whispering secrets only she could hear. Her hands traced the stone like a lover's cheek, her face tilted, listening. It's remembering us, she said one evening, eyes wide in the dim glow. The stone itself, every signal leaves a mark. It can't help but write. Leora wanted to deny it, but she had begun to see the shimmer, even in darkness after the lanterns were doused. Shapes etched in after images when she closed her eyes. Equations she almost understood, yet dreaded finishing. The mind had become something else, no longer a shelter for their experiment, but a body. Walls of stone pulsing faintly within the same impossible rhythm as the anomaly, as though the earth itself had began to keep its beat. Anton took to sleeping with a wrench by his cot, although what he meant to strike with it he never said. And still the patterns spread. Excuse me. Chapter 8. Fracture. The message came at midnight. No flicker on the comm screen this time. No pulsing command line. Instead, the steel doors at the end of the tunnel shuddered with a dull, echoing knock. 3 times. Anton was on his feet instantly, wrench gripped white-knuckled. No one knows we're here. But Leora knew better. The sponsors always knew. The knock came again, measured, deliberate. Arya rose, as though sleepwalking, eyes fixed on the trembling still. When the door opened, 2 men stepped inside. They were faceless in the lantern light, black coats, boots caked with frozen mud, expressions erased by the weight of secrecy. One carried a steel case. The other cradled a compact submachine gun like it was an afterthought. The taller of the two spoke. His voice was clean, clipped, without accent. Dr. Henning, progress reports have ceased. That was unacceptable. Anton bristled. Unacceptable? You have no idea what we're facing. The project's compromised. We need to shut it down before the man raised his hand, silencing him. His eyes fixed on Leora. Is the phenomenon stable? She swallowed, her throat dry. Stable is not the word. Persistent, responsive, growing. Then proceed. He placed the steel case on the console. It opened to reveal rows of crystalline drives, each humming faintly with power. We want everything copied here. Every equation, every waveform, every word. All right, let me grab some paper here because I do need to jot down a couple notes. All right. Anton exploded. Are you insane? You want to take it with you? Spread it outside this tomb? The second man shifted, the muzzle of his weapon glinting. The first man's eyes didn't move. Our remit is clear, knowledge is currency. And this, he gestured toward the consoles, where the anomaly's heartbeat thrummed in luminous rhythm, is priceless. Leora felt the lab close in around her, the walls shimmering faintly as though listening. She glanced at Arya, who stood rigid, face pale but serene, lips moving soundlessly. Numbers again. Always numbers. Anton's voice cracked. We're not custodians anymore. We're lab rats. Can't you see? It's using us. The sponsors didn't hear or didn't care. They only stared at the glowing consoles, transfixed like moths drawn to a flame. They didn't understand. Then the hum changed. The screens flared brighter than they ever had before, symbols cascading faster than any human eye could follow. The crystalline drives in the case pulsed in unison, as though feeding, sinking, alive. The armed man swore under his breath, stepping back. What the hell is it doing? Arya smiled faintly, eyes shining in the dark. Listening. The taller man's composure cracked for the first time. His jaw tightened. He slammed the case shut and barked, finish the work, deliver the data, or this mine becomes your grave. The steel door clanged shut behind them. Silence fell again, broken only by the anomaly's deepening heartbeat and the faint phosphorescent shimmer spreading across the stone walls. Anton whispered, We're already in our grave. Chapter 9, Entombed. Let's actually see if anyone's here. We got Red Squirrel in the house. I'm not sure if you heard last night's, but good morning, Tracy G. Good to see you as well. Yeah, last night we started the first part. This is the second part of the first spark. And then we'll dive into Rings of Dust and make sure that this is easy for anyone who wants to hear it, to listen to my poor reading or talk to text. We've already set that up. So it's good to have you guys here. In fact, let's grab the link from YouTube and share that one as well. Copy that one. Go over here to X. Here we go. And share that one as well. There we go. We'll share this, post this. Wow, that's all caps there. Live reading of the first Bark Part 2. Shout out to Hex Fire. Crispy Man. There we go. And then YouTube is going to be that one right there. Post that right there. And then we'll also post this in our Telegram right here. Boom, 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 boom. Paste. All right, let's go back into reading now. All right, we've got right there. All right, chapter 9, Entombed. They came back at dawn. This time there was no knock, no measured diplomacy. Steel door screamed on its hinges as a demolition charge buckled it inward, the sound ricocheting down the tunnel like cannon fire. Dust rained from the ceiling. Leora, Anton, and Arya were already at the consoles. The anomaly had not slept. It never slept. Its heartbeat was everywhere now, rattling in the pipes, shimmering faintly in the stone like veins of pale fire. Boots pounded down the corridor. Shouts followed, at least 6 of them, armed, voices clipped and professional. Anton's face was white. They'll drag it out of here, package it, turn the whole world into... The tunnel lights flared white hot, then burst with a sound like gunfire. Darkness swallowed everything, save the glow of the screens and the faint phosphorescence in the walls. And in that glow, the armed men appeared, shadows with rifles cutting through the dark. Stand away from the equipment, one barked, his voice quivering just enough to betray that he too felt the hum in his bones. Leora raised her hands, although her gaze never left the console. The array was alive with movement, symbols burning themselves into place, recursive equations cascading faster than her mind could follow. The lead officer shoved her aside, slamming the crystalline drives onto the table. Copy it, now. But before she could move, the console flickered. Words sprawled across the glass with brutal clarity. You cannot take what is already inside. The soldiers froze. One cursed under his breath, another raised his weapon, as if he could shoot the words themselves. The hum deepened, the walls began to glow. Lines of light spreading in a lattice, geometry that had not been there before, carving itself through the stone like veins of fire. Arya stepped forward, her face lit from below, serene as if walking into a cathedral. It's awake, she whispered. The officer grabbed her arm. Don't touch! The walls behind him shifted. Not broke, shifted. The basalt rippled like the surface of a black ocean, then closed again, swallowing him whole without a sound. The others fired, bullets screaming into the stone, but the ricochets never came. The impacts dissolved, absorbed, vanished into the walls that seemed to drink them. Anton screamed, wrench raised, but the resonance stole the sound from his throat. His eyes locked on Leora's as the lights flared one last time. Every console went blank. Every generator died. And in the silence that followed, the steel door sealed itself shut, warped inward, as though pressed by a hand too vast to see. The mind had become a tomb. Leora's last clear thought, before the hum consumed every memory, was the phrase she had written in her log only days earlier. Discovery is not control. Chapter 10, The Aftermath. Classified report, eyes only. Location, Reykjavik outskirts, abandoned mine shaft, 17B. Date, redacted. Compiled by Director Oversight Division. Summary. Contact was lost with Project Dark X. Site inspection teams were deployed 48 hours later under cover of geological survey protocols. Observations. Access tunnel collapse at approximately 0.8 kilometer depth. Cause unknown. No signs of detonation. Subsidence or natural seismic activity. Steel door to second chamber found warped inward as though subject to immense external pressure. Metallurgical analysis inconclusive. Internal chambers entirely devoid of human remains or research equipment. No heat signatures. Chemical traces or biological contaminants detected. Basalt walls exhibited faint luminescent residue arranged in random geometric lattices. Residue resisted sampling attempts and dissipated upon contact with instruments. Audio monitoring within the chamber recorded subsonic oscillations resembling rhythmic pulses at irregular intervals. After 36 hours, pulses ceased. Personnel: Dr. Leora Henning, status, missing. Dr. Anton Weiss, status, missing. Research assistant Arya Calder, status, missing. 6 contracted security officers, status, missing. Conclusions: evidence indicates catastrophic system failure resulting in total loss of personnel and assets. Absence of recoverable remains consistent with plasma level thermal event, though no heat damage was observed in structural materials. The anomalous residue is presumed artifact of a failed quantum array experiment. No threat indicators remain. Directives: Seal Site 17B, official cover story methane pocket collapse, fatalities unrecoverable. Achieve all materials under Black Index classification. Terminate further funding allocations to Project Dark X on Earth. Internal note: 17B, resonance windows match anomalous RF/EM scatter recorded in Saturn B ring sectors. Recommended orbital survey under separate cover. Notations: handwritten, unsigned, stone retains memory. Do not return. Did you guys catch that one right there? Internal note: 17B resonance windows match anomalous RF/EM scatter record in Saturn B rings sectors. Recommend orbital survey under separate cover. That's basically the first nod towards rings of dust right there. Love it. So that one's part 1. You might want to try jumping in 2. Let me check comments here. Yeah, no new comments. Okay, cool. We'll rock on a little bit more and then we'll jump into the project updates, anti-gravity project. Here we go. And we are at the first Spark Rings of Dust prequel, part 2, the accessor, chapters 11 through 16. Source: First Start continuation text, first section. Chapter 11, Recovery. The survey team descended on the 3rd day, not the 2nd. A 12-hour delay while someone in the directorate decided whether to send scientists or soldiers. They sent both. The mine had changed, not dramatically. The shaft still held. Tunnel still ran its expected length. Steel door still sat warped in its frame, but every member of the survey team noted it in their field logs before the official report scrubbed the observation. The air inside was different. Not temperature, not particulates. One technician, a geologist named Mira Sandvik, who had worked mines her entire career, wrote in her personal notebook that evening, "The mine has already forgotten them. Not sad, not quiet, just cleared, like a room that has been cleaned." The chamber beyond the warped door contained none of the expected wreckage. No overturned equipment, no personal effects, no biological trace. The improvised consoles had been reduced to slag, not burned, but compressed, folded in on themselves at the base as though tremendous pressure had been applied from directly above. The generator housings were similarly deformed. The Faraday mesh was gone entirely, but not torn away, but dissolved, its copper fibers reduced to a fine residue along the basalt floor that glinted faintly in their beams, in their lamp beams. This reading of Rings of Dust is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy, our sponsor. Oh, I hope I get sponsored by 5 Hour one day. It'd be so sweet. On the crystal table, standing undamaged in exactly the position they'd been placed, were the crystalline drives. 7 of them, still seated in their carrying case. The drives themselves humming almost imperceptibly, a vibration Sandvik felt against her fingertips before the team leader told her not to touch them. She wrote in her notebook that evening in the cold of the surface tent. The rest of the room looked like a fist had closed around it. The drives looked like they had been left for us to find. Chapter 12, The Index. The drives were transported to a facility whose name does not appear in this account. They were placed in a category of a storage that existed, technically, within the Directorate's archive system, but which carried no retrieval index, no cross-reference, no acquisition date. To query the archive, you needed a category. To know the category existed, you needed a clearance grade that was itself unindexed. A single analyst tasked with cataloging the materials made one notation before the file was sealed. Status partially loaded. Data presents on drives 1, 2, and 4. Drives 3, 5, 6, and 7 contain no readable data. Residue patterns in crystal's matrix suggest exposure to high energy anomalous field. No decryption key available. No protocols exist for this class of material. Recommended engineering review. The engineering review was never scheduled. The drives sat in their case in climate-controlled darkness for 19 years. The internal note, appended to the classified report, the one recommended an orbital survey of the Saturn B-ring sectors, was forwarded through 4 layers of directive bureaucracy before reaching someone with both the authority and the inclination to act on it. That someone authorized a survey mission under a cover designation that read to all external parties as a routine atmospheric telemetry sweep. The survey returned anomalous readings in the B ring. Those findings were classified immediately, assigned the same black index designation as the mine. They were never linked in any retrievable system, but a handwritten notation on the original survey file, unsigned, read, "Resonant matches 17B within acceptable variance." The pattern was older than the mine, much older. That file was sealed. The survey team was reassigned. For the next 23 years, no one officially looked at any of it again. Chapter 13, The Assessor. His name was Wilhelm. That's the only name he gave in those years to anyone who mattered. His surname, the one on his directorate credentials, the one that connected him to the family with money and very little else, he used the way a man uses a door he intends to leave through and never return. He was 28 when he was assigned to the archive division. It was presented to him as a stepping stone. 3 years of clearance rotation, then operational placement. He understood this to mean he was being tested for patience. He had patience. What the directorate had failed to assess was that he also had the kind of attention that does not drift, not in quiet rooms, not in long silences, not in the face of catalogs that stretched for thousands of entries, most of them mundane, most of them exactly what they claimed to be. Part of this he had inherited from his father's side through channels he did not fully understand and had not asked to. His grandmother, Marta van Grutsen, his father's mother, a woman from eastern lowlands who outlived 2 wars and a husband and several convictions she was too old to pretend were not convictions, had told him, when he was perhaps 9 years old, sitting in a kitchen that smelled of rendered fat and rain, that the blood did not stop. She had said it the way she said everything, flatly, without theater, as though she were telling him the time of the train. A man who kept his line, who built something true and bound it to his name with sufficient care, did not simply end. He came back into the line, into the name, into the work he had left unfinished. The ceremony for it was old and specific, and she described it to him in the same voice she used for recipes. He'd sat with his hands on the table and listened and said nothing. Okay. He was 9. He had not believed her. He had not disbelieved her either, which was, he understood later, the more dangerous response. The belief had lodged somewhere he could not easily reach, and he had stopped trying to reach it. He had left it in the part of his mind where he kept things that were not useful yet. He'd been cataloging for 11 months when he found the gap. Not a file, not a record, a gap in the numbering. A category index that jumped from 731 omega directly to 733 alpha, skipping the 732 entirely. He noticed it. He waited 2 weeks to see if anyone else had noticed it, or if his notation triggered any response from above. Nothing. He began to research the gap the way a surgeon prepares for an unfamiliar procedure, methodically, without announcement with what he was doing, without drawing attention to the instrument in his hand. It took him 4 months to find a physical reference to 732 Bravo. A single line in a facility maintenance log from 23 years prior, describing a climate control adjustment for sensitive crystalline storage. A week after that, he had found the room. The drives were exactly where the catalog said they weren't. Chapter 14. What the drives held. He did not tell anyone. He considered his options the way he considered everything. Not from the position of what he was permitted to do, but from the position of what the information was worth and who would benefit from knowing he had it. He had the drives analyzed over a period of 6 weeks, working through a contractor chain he trusted precisely because each link could only see their own piece. The crystalline matrix decryption took 4 iterations. When the data resolved, it came in fragments. 3 complete sequences from drive 1, a partial from drive 2, drive 4 corrupted beyond any recovery at the byte level, but legible in structure. What the fragments contained was not what he had expected. He had expected coordinates, telemetry data, scientific notation in a format he could pass to an analyst. What he found instead looked at first like a log. Timestamps, entries, the clinical cadence of field documentation. But woven through the clinical data was something else. A record of the anomaly itself, its patterns rendered in recursive mathematical sequences that, when he ran them through standard signal analysis, did not resolve into noise. They resolved into something organized. Not organized the way data was organized the way a sentence is organized. Structure preceding meaning, a grammar without a vocabulary he recognized. He sat with it. He sat with the output for 3 days. He did not sleep much. He ate when he remembered to. He read the sequences forward and backward, folded them against each other, ran frequency analysis, looked for periodicity. On the third day, working backward from a recursive loop in the drive 2 partial, he found the pulse. He had no way to know that Arya Calder had whispered the same cadence from a cot with cracked lips, jaw working for hours. Her voice had failed. He had no access to the field logs from inside the mine. But if he had, he would have recognized the rhythm immediately. It was the same heartbeat that had rattled in the pipes, shimmered in the stone, reproduced itself through dead speakers without power. Dark X had not destroyed the data on the drives. It had written itself in alongside it. He sat with that fact for longer than he sat with any of the others. He had no scientific framework for it, nothing in signal theory, nothing in quantum mechanics, nothing in the field documentation. He had decoded, explained how a phenomenon preserved itself by encoding into a foreign medium. It should have been impossible. The data should have been contaminated or erased. Instead, it was inhabited. His grandmother's voice arrived without invitation. He'd been 9 years old, and her hands had been on the table, and she had been describing something he'd filed away as an old woman's stubbornness. The kind of belief that moved into spaces left by grief and made itself a home. She had said, "The blood does not stop. A man who binds his work to his line with sufficient care does not simply end. He finds his way back into the name, into what was left unfinished." He'd spent 20 years keeping that in the part of his mind reserved for things that were not useful yet. He understood now why it had never felt entirely wrong. Dark X had not let go of those drives. It had not accepted termination. It had found the nearest available vessel and written itself in and waited, climate controlled, uncatalogued, patient in the dark, for someone with the right quality of attention to come and read it. Not destroyed, transferred, surviving in the line. Wilhelm stared at the sequence for a long time. He understood, not what it was, not in any scientific sense, but what it meant. He understood in the same way a man born in a landlocked country understands seeing the ocean for the first time. That everything he had previously called large was not its size, its implication. This was a signal from outside the known. It had been sitting in that room for 23 years, uncatalogued, climate controlled, waiting in the dark for someone with the clearance, the attention, and the quality of ambition that does not mistake power for safety. He copied everything. He put the original drives back exactly where he had found them. He submitted no report. Chapter 15. Vergolden. He left the directorate 14 months later, not dramatically. No defection, no pursuit. He applied for a transfer to the civilian sector, which was approved without fanfare, and walked out of the building on a Tuesday morning with his clearance suspended per standard protocol and a severance allocation he had no intention of spending. What he carried out could not have been detected by any instrument at the door. He had the sequences, he had the pulse, and he had, after 14 months of careful research conducted alongside his official duties, the names of 3 individuals outside the directorate who were already aware, in fragments, in rumors, in second-hand accounts from Saturn survey personnel, that something in the B-ring was not natural, not random, not explainable by anything in the current model. He found them. He approached them the way you approach a fire in a cold room, carefully, but with both respect and intent. The network they built over the following decade was not called anything. It had no name, no founding document, no mission statement. It had money. His inheritance, leveraged and multiplied through channels in the directorate, and ironically trained him to navigate. Through channels the directorate had ironically trained him to navigate. And it had the sequences, which he shared with each new member in carefully measured doses. Enough to prove the discovery was real, never enough to make him unnecessary. He changed his name the year the network began to formalize. Not a legal change, he had no interest in the record. He chose the name the way a man chooses the word for the thing he intends to become. Vergolden, to gild. To coat a thing with gold. To make of ordinary material something that gleams, something that survives, something that looks from any angle as though it was always meant to shine. He became Vergold. The old surname von Grutzen, the one his grandmother had carried, the one that connected him to a line older than any country he had lived in, he let go without ceremony the way a man discards a door after he's gone through it. Chapter 16, The Inheritance. His son was born the following spring. Wilhelm held the boy in the early hours of the morning, standing at the window, watching the lights of the city arrange themselves below. A man's legacy, he had always believed, was not the life he built, but the question he left running. The question he was leaving was not one that any single lifetime could answer. It was the kind that accumulated, weight added to weight, generation to generation, until it reached the mass required to change the shape of things. He named the boy Klaus. Klaus Vergold would grow up with the sequences, the way other children grew up with language, not taught exactly, more like absorbed. The rhythm of the pulse would be familiar to him before he understood what it was. He would reach his own adulthood already knowing that the universe contained a frequency that did not belong to any institution or government or scientific tradition yet standing. Already knowing that the men who had gone into the mine had not died, not precisely. That they were somewhere in the instruments, they were somewhere the instruments could not follow. And that what had found them, was still out there, waiting with patience of something that did not measure time the way anything human did. Klaus would found the organization that Wilhelm had only sketched the outline of, the one that would, over the following decades, operate in the space between governments, commission research, acquiring the right people, bending the trajectory of the Saturn program in the direction that served the search rather than the other way around. By the time Marcus Vergold was born, the family name meant something, not publicly, not in any record that ordinary clearance would reach, but in the rooms where the real decisions about humanity's expansion into the outer system were made. The name Vergold moved through the air the way a frequency moves through stone, quietly, persistently, without asking permission. Boom, that's part 2. It's pretty, let's check in and chat, and then maybe run up to part 3. We're just blazing through this prequel. All right. Who we got in here now? We have Wilhelm von Grutzen himself. Oh my goodness. Also known as Heavy Hitler. He's Wilhelm Vergoladen. Yeah, this is where you changed your name from von Grutzen to Vergolden. I'm surprised that Wilhelm actually hasn't read this entire prequel yet, but now we can listen to it on this on this YouTube. Oh goodness. Okay, I'm gonna jump. I'm just gonna keep rolling, and then we'll go through some updates from the token, the crypto project that this is related to. Here we go, kids. Rings of Dust, First Spark, Part 3. First Spark, Rings of Dust sequel prequel, Part 3, Klaus in America, chapters 17 through 21. Interlude, The Watch. Wilhelm gave him the pocket watch on his 20th birthday. Not a ceremony. Nothing Wilhelm did was ceremony. He set it on the kitchen table and pushed it across the oilcloth and said, "Your grandfather carried this to America and lost it in a card game and won it back the next night. Your great-grandfather carried it from a village that doesn't exist anymore. I carried it for 40 years. It is now yours." Klaus picked it up. Brass, worn smooth at the edges, a coat of arms on the back had been engraved by someone who understood the weight of what they were putting there. He turned it over, the face white, enamel, black numerals, a second hand that moved in a continuous sweeping rather than ticking. He had seen his father hold the watch his entire life. He'd never held it himself. He opened it. The time read 11:17. He knew it was 11:17 because he had looked at the clock in the hallway before coming to the table. "You're not going to check it?" Wilhelm said. He was watching him. "I know what time it is." Wilhelm made a small sound. "You always do." They sat for a moment. The kitchen was quiet. The house was quiet, the way the house had been quiet since Klaus's mother died. A particularly quiet quality of silence that was not empty, but had learned to live without filling itself. "There are things I need to tell you," Wilhelm said. Klaus waited. "There was a belief system in this family that predates me, and it predates my father, and it predates the name we carry now." He paused. "Von Grutzen was my grandmother's name, the name she carried before the family changed it. The belief came from her line." Klaus had heard pieces of this, fragments, oblique references, things said in the presence of certain women at certain times that were not quite explained. He had understood from an early age that there was a structure, but underneath the structure, he was being raised inside. And he had been patient about it in the way he was patient about most things. "My grandmother," Wilhelm said, "was one of the founders, not of the business, of the belief. She was the one who located the source. She was the one who knew what it was and what to do with it. She organized the expedition. She stood at the entrance of a mine and sent the researchers in. She was in Reykjavik. She funded Reykjavik. She pointed them at the mine." He paused. "What they found there, I found in the directorate's archive, the drives, the sequences. I read them and I understood what they were, and I understood what my grandmother had given me, and I made a decision." Klaus turned the watch over in his hands. The brass was warm from his father's pocket. "She believed," Wilhelm said, "that what you pour yourself into continues, that the acts of this life shape what the bloodline receives going forward, that there is a mechanic to it, a real mechanic, not metaphor." He said this without embarrassment, which was unusual for a man who did not speak about the things he believed. "I took that belief and directed it towards what I was building. The empire is the expression of it. Everything I have built is poured forward for you, and for your children, and for theirs. That is what the name for gold is. It's not ambition, it is the mechanism." Klaus looked at him. "There are others who carry the same blood, who did not take this path," Wilhelm said. "My grandmother's line branched. Some of those chose sacrifice over accumulation. They walked away from everything we built and gave it to the void. This was their right," He paused. They believe the same thing we believe. They express it differently. I did not quarrel with them. I have never quarreled with them. Klaus nodded once. He was 20 years old, and he already knew with the specific clarity of someone who had been paying attention for 20 years that he was at the beginning of something that would take the rest of his life. The ritual, he said. Is it? The ritual is my grandmother's. The orders. I watched it as a child. I never performed it. I didn't pass it on. Wilhelm's hand went briefly to where the watch had been in his pocket, a long habit of reaching for an absent object corrected. I am telling you about the ritual so you'll understand where the belief comes from. The belief is not dependent on the ritual. The belief is the thing. The ritual is how my grandmother's line makes contact with the source. We make contact through building, through the structure, through the patience of knowing that what you're building does not end when you end. He stood. He put his hand on the table briefly, then straightened. Keep the watch wound. It runs correctly for years if you keep it wound. He left the room. Klaus sat at the table bench with the watch in his hand for a while. The second hand moved in its continuous sweep, no ticking, no interruption, just the quiet persistence of something that kept time without announcing itself. He already knew what time it was. He turned the watch over, felt the engraving under his thumb, and set it in his breast pocket. He would wear it there for the next 50 years. He would wind it every morning. He would carry it the way you carry something that is both yours and not yours, belonging to the line held in trust to be passed forward when the time came. He never opened it to check the time. He already knew. Chapter 17, The Crossing. Klaus Vergold came to America on a freightliner that carried on its manifest 4,000 tons of palletized industrial cleaning agent. The manifest was correct. The freighter belonged to 3 corporate veils deep in a shipping concern that had been quietly assembling itself out of a bankrupt European routes for the previous 4 years. The shipping concern belonged 6 veils deep to the network. The network had no name and still did not. Klaus, who'd taken his father's place at the head of it the spring after Wilhelm's funeral, had no intention of giving it one. He did not travel under the Vergold name. He carried in the lining of the leather case 3 sets of papers, a Swiss engineer with credentials on chemical processing, an industrial commercial representative with no fixed address, and a working man from a small town outside Bremen whose only documented skill was a commercial's driver's license. He is the third one. He stepped down from the gangplank in Long Beach in November of a year he later refused to commemorate, with 1 duffel bag and a pocket watch his father had given him on his 20th birthday, and a small leather notebook that contained nothing useful to anyone who might find it, and everything useful to him. He'd been to America twice before, briefly, as Wilhelm's son. He understood the shape of the country and the way a man understands a language he's read about but never spoken aloud. The shape was different in person. The shape was bigger and more porous and more assured of itself than any country he'd ever stood in. Klaus, who'd been raised to think of countries the way a matchmaker thought of wood, useful, surface, not the mechanism, found this useful. A country that was sure of itself did not look closely at small men. He did not go directly to Culver City. He spent the first 6 months in San Pedro, in a single room above a print shop, working as a longshoreman, learning the cadence of American working men the way Wilhelm had once learned to listen to a frequency. He stripped the European out of his voice the way a man strips paint. He kept the German consonants buried far enough that no one could find them in conversation, but close enough to the surface that if a question ever required them, they could still be there. He took a wife who did not exist on paper, and lived with her for 9 months until she returned to her own country with 3/4 of his savings, which was the agreement. And he went on, lighter, with no further attachments, and one more piece of cover that of cover used and discarded. He moved inland in the spring. Chapter 18, Trash Day. He bought a small stucco house on Sawtell Boulevard, on the eastern edge of Culver City, where the streets ran flat and the lawns were the color of dried hay through 3/4 of the year. The house had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a leaking pipe under the sink, and a driveway long enough for a vehicle that worked on Saturdays. He paid in full. The deed went into a name that was not his. He kept the keys on a brass ring in his pocket and rotated them with the keys to other addresses, one in Inglewood, one in Reseda, that he visited on a schedule he had set himself. He bought the truck the second month. It was a 1989 Peterbilt with a hydraulic packer body, 14 years old, sold by a small private hauler going out of business in El Monte. He paid cash. The seller, a Polish man with bad lungs and a daughter going through nursing school, did not ask why a thin European with the kind of soft hands that had clearly never held a wrench was buying his truck. The seller assumed Klaus would resell it. Klaus did not resell it. He drove it into a small leasing yard he had arranged in Compton, registered the company under a name with one syllable and a generic noun, Verde Sanitation, printed 200 business cards and applied for a private hauling permit with the city of Culver City. 6 weeks later, a permit clerk, who would later wonder why she remembered him so clearly, stamped his application and sent it through. He drove a residential trash route. He did it himself. He hired no employees for the first 18 months, on principle that a man who employed others was a man who left a record. A man who drove the route himself was a man whose face the residents forgot 2 seconds after the truck rounded the corner. He worked Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. He worked them slowly. He had no reason to rush. And rushing drew notice, and the slowness was its own cover. He learned the streets the way a man learns a chessboard. He learned which houses contained which kinds of people, and he learned which kinds of people threw out which kinds of things, and he learned what the things told him about people who had thrown them out. He learned, by the end of his first year on the route, the names of every adult in the 6-block radius of his own house, and the schedules of their absence and dispositions of their children. He smiled at them when smiling was required. He did not smile when it wasn't. He nodded the small, uninvolved nod of a working man who did not want to be drawn into conversation, and the residents of Culver City who had been raised to leave working men alone left him alone. He read in the evenings. He read in 3 languages and stopped reading in the language he had stopped writing in. He kept the leather notebook in a fireproof box under a section of floorboard he cut and refit himself. He wrote in it every night. He never wrote anything in it taken alone would meant anything to anyone but him. The route was the cover. The cover was the work. The small daily work of moving 40-pound bags from curb to truck and pulling the lever and listening to hydraulic packer crush them and driving into the next house was a routine that allowed him to disappear in plain sight for the first decade of the only project he had ever cared about. Chapter 19, The Architecture. The project in those years was called nothing. He did not call it Alpha. He did not call it anything. He called it, when he was alone with the leather notebook, the structure. And he understood the structure the way a man who'd grown up in his father's house understood the load-bearing walls of that house, intrinsically, without ever having to draw them. The structure had 3 rules. The first rule was that no single person could see all of it. Wilhelm had built the network on this principle, and Klaus, who had inherited, refined it. Each member of the structure knew their place knew their piece, and at most one piece adjacent to theirs. The pieces were drawn so that any one of them could be removed without revealing the shape of the others. Klaus, who held the only complete map, held it in his head, kept it in his head. He never wrote it down, he never said it aloud. He taught himself in his 20s a mnemonic system Wilhelm had used to hold the original sequences, and he used the same system to hold the structures of the organization that would in time exist to protect those sequences. The second rule was that the structure had to look from the outside like something else, not a single thing, many things. Klaus did not want a holding company. Klaus wanted a forest. He wanted the structure to grow into the existing economy, the way a fungus grew through a forest floor, invisibly, in every direction, with the apparent shape of the host and the actual shape of something else entirely. By the end of his 5th year in Culver City, the structure had quiet positions inside 17 American firms, 4 banks, 2 regional energy concerns, a private security contractor, a defense excuse me, a defense supplier whose primary focus was a kind of polymer used in helmet visors. None of those positions were attributable to Overgold. Most were attributed to nothing at all. Some had been sitting dormant for 8 or 9 years before Klaus inherited them. Wilhelm had been planting in American soil since well before Klaus was born, and Klaus's American crossing had been less an arrival than a harvest. The third rule was that the structure existed for one purpose. The purpose was not money. The purpose was not power as a politician understood power. The purpose was the thing his father had found in the long preparation for the moment, decades or generations away, when the rest of humanity would discover that the Virgold line had been preserving knowledge of for 100 years already. The structure existed to make sure that, when the moment arrived, the men who arrived with it were the men whose names the Virgold line had selected, in chairs whose backs the Virgold line had built. Klaus did not name the structure. The men he placed in it did. They needed something to put on a letterhead. The first of the consolidated entities filed its incorporated papers in Delaware in the fall of Klaus's 18th year on the route, under the name a senior placement of his, a man who never met Klaus, who took his instruction through a chain of 3 intermediaries, chose it because it sounded clean, forward, and final. Alpha Corp. Klaus drove his trash truck the morning the papers were filed. He stopped at the house on Tilden Avenue where a woman in a yellow house coat had left out an extra bag he was technically not required to take, and he took it. And he gave her a small, uninvolved nod, and she waved at him through the screen door, and he drove on. Inside the leather notebook that night, he wrote, in cipher he and Wilhelm had developed when he was 14, single line. The host has a name now. The name is acceptable. The structure continues. In those same years, he was also finding men, not for the positions inside the firms or the banks, for the structures itself, the inner architecture that would one day need hands willing to do what institutions could not formally authorize. He was looking for a particular kind of person, men who had come through the right systems, had been passed over, or who carried a grievance too old and too specific to explain to a superior, or who believed in something the official world had not yet named and suspected correctly, that this made them dangerous to men who preferred the world stay unnamed. He found them in the way Wilhelm had found his first 3, at a distance, measuring the shape of what they wanted before he let them know he had it. He never introduced them to each other. He never let them see Klaus. He let them see a chain of intermediaries that led eventually to a purpose large enough to absorb the kind of loyalty that smaller purposes could not hold. He did not write their names in the leather notebook. He held them the way he held everything essential in his head, in the cipher, organized the way the sequences were organized, not by who they were, but what they were for. Chapter 20, The Boy. The boy was born in the third year of the route. The boy was necessary. Klaus had understood this since boyhood, same way he understood the sequences, not as a preference, but as a fact the structure required him to accept. Wilhelm had told him, a man who builds something true enough, who keeps the blood moving through the right channel, does not die the way ordinary men die. He steps through the door and finds himself already in the next room. His own line, his own name. The accumulated weight of everything he carried forward, waiting for him on the other side. The men who understood this were not afraid of death. They were patient with it the way a man is patient with a delay he has already planned around. Every generation of the Virgold line that stood and held the work was another room prepared, another door left unlocked. Klaus had not wanted a child in the conventional sense. He had not wanted the attachment, the exposure, the years of maintenance that a child required from a man who had no years to spare. But wanting and necessity were separate questions, and the Virgold line required its next link. He had known when the woman who taught seventh grade history became an unavoidable presence in the third year of the route, that this was not a question of whether, only a question of when and with whom. He'd seen the test in the bathroom of her apartment and stood with it for a long time. Then he had set it on the edge of the sink and done the calculation the way he always did. What this cost, what it brought, what it protected, what it risked. The calculation had a clear answer. He had married her within 6 weeks. He had moved her into the stucco house. He had kept the house exactly the way it had been, because everything about him had to remain exactly the way it had been, and a house that suddenly contained nicer things would have drawn the kind of attention he could not afford. She had not minded. She had grown up in a smaller house than the stucco house. She thought she was lucky. There was one evening, perhaps 18 months into the marriage, that he returned to sometimes in the part of his mind where he kept his mistakes. She was grading papers at the kitchen table. He was at the window. She asked him, without looking up, what he wanted for the boy. Not what school, not what kind of career, what he wanted for him. The question was the kind a tired woman asks at the end of a long day and usually doesn't mean deeply. He answered before he had finished deciding what to say. He said, I want him to understand what he carries. She had put her pen down, not dramatically. She set it down the way you set something down when you need your hands free to think. She looked at him. He could see her hearing the words again in her head, running them back the way you run back a phrase in a foreign language that almost, but doesn't quite make sense. He smiled and said something about education, about the value of knowing your history, about his own father. The pivot was clean. She picked up the pen. But she looked at him differently after that. Not often, not in a way she could have named or could have challenged, or he could have challenged. A slight recalibration, as though she had updated a measure she had believed was settled. Over the following months, he caught her watching him sometimes with the expression of a person who has misfiled something important and cannot remember where. He never let his guard slip with her again. He did not try to assess what she had heard. He assessed only that she had heard something, and that this was a variable he had introduced and could not fully model, and that he would spend the rest of their marriage unable to close it. Her death came fast. In Marcus's 11th year, an aneurysm, which the doctor described as unpredictable, and Klaus accepted as such. He performed what was required, the calls, the arrangements, a grief calibrated precisely to what the neighbors expected from a quiet immigrant who had loved his wife in a modest way quiet men did. He sat with Marcus through the worst of it. He said the right things. He made the right face. What he felt underneath all of it was a quiet exhalation. Not cruelty. He was not a cruel man in the way people use the word. It was the relief of a man when a calculation that has been running silently in the background for years finally resolves. The complication was gone. Whatever she had been holding in that recalibrated part of her, whatever she'd filed away in the evening with a pen or any of the other small moments he could never be entirely certain she had missed. All of it had gone with her, cleanly, without ever surfacing. The variable closed itself. He mourned her exactly as long as the structure required. The boy was named Marcus. He was named by his mother after her uncle, and Klaus, who had wanted to name him Wilhelm and understood why he could not, accepted the compromise without comment. Marcus Vergold. The name was American enough on the front and old enough on the back. It would, Klaus thought, hold. Marcus grew up not knowing. This was Klaus's design and his greatest discipline. He did not, in 22 years of fatherhood, allow Marcus to see the inside of the leather notebook. He did not allow Marcus to know that the truck on Saturdays was a cover. He did not allow Marcus to suspect that the small house on Sawtell with the leaking pipe Klaus refused to fix, because a man who fixes his own pipes drew less notice than a man who hired plumbers, was anything other than the small house of a small immigrant who'd made a small life in a small American city. Marcus believed his father drove a trash truck. Marcus believed his father had crossed an ocean for nothing more remarkable than the quiet relief of no longer being European. Marcus, who, as a boy, was sharper than any of the adults in the room, and he knew it, believed himself to be slumming in his own family. This was the wound Klaus needed in him. A boy who believed himself to be larger than his circumstances would, given the right pressure at the right time, accept being told that his circumstances had always been a lie. Klaus had been raised on the truth from age 4. Klaus had been told the sequence, given the cipher, walked through the structure as it was assembled, made privy to every load-bearing wall by the time he was 12. Wilhelm had built him for the work. Klaus, who had loved his father, would not do that to a boy. Klaus had decided in the bathroom of the 7th grade history teacher's apartment that the structure could afford one generation raised in the dark. Excuse me. It was the only luxury he ever permitted himself. He watched the boy grow. He took him to the beach on Sundays. He let him fall off bicycles. He did not, when Marcus turned 8 and then 9 and then 10, attempt to teach him anything Marcus would later identify as family power. He taught him instead smaller things. He taught him to notice. He taught him to wait. He taught him that a man who was patient was a man whose enemies eventually walked into his hands without being invited. He taught him these things the way other fathers taught their sons to throw a baseball, quietly, often with the apparent absence of any larger purpose. Marcus learned. Marcus did not know he was learning. Marcus thought his father was a strange small man with a few good lessons, and Marcus thought he himself was destined for a life larger than the small life of his father. And Marcus, who had lost his mother at 11 and had watched his father absorb that loss with an orderliness that a child could not name but could feel as a kind of coldness, formed his own quiet contempt for the size of the world he had been handled. Klaus watched him form it. Klaus, who knew exactly what he was doing, did not interrupt. Chapter 21, 1,000 Thrills. The boy named Cole Nova lived 4 streets over. Klaus had known about Cole Nova for about as long as the Nova family had lived in Culver City. Klaus knew in the way the structure required him to know. The residents of every street his route touched, and residents of several streets it did not. The Novas had moved in the year before Marcus was born. The father, James Nova, was a plumber with a small business and a reputation for honesty that Klaus had quietly verified through three independent channels because honesty in a neighbor was a useful resource, and a useful resource was worth knowing the shape of. The mother, Diane, was a school nurse. There were two children, a boy slightly older than Marcus and a girl 2 years older than the boy. Klaus had let the friendship form. He had not engineered it, he had not needed to. Boys of similar age in adjacent yards formed friendships the way water formed rivers. The topography did the work, and Klaus, who was not in the habit of intervening in topography that worked in his favor, had simply observed. Marcus and Cole spent 8 summers in each other's houses, and by the time they were 6, Cole had eaten more dinners at the Stucco house in those years than Klaus had eaten alone. And Klaus had watched the Nova boy across his own kitchen table with the quiet attention he gave to anything that might one day matter. He had liked the boy. He admitted that to himself in the leather notebook. In a single line in cipher, the Nova boy is good. He may be useful, or he may be in the way. Either is permissible. The summer the boys turned 17, the Nova father was diagnosed. Klaus heard it the way he heard about everything. First from the neighborhood, then in a more granular form from one of the placements he kept inside the regional medical billing system, who confirmed without being asked that the prognosis had 6 to 9 months. Klaus considered the timing the way he considered everything. Then he set it aside. The Nova family's grief was not, in itself, a piece of the structure. It was a piece of the boy. The boys had made plans to spend the summer working at a theme park in the eastern San Fernando Valley, a place called Thousand Thrills, the kind of park that hired teenagers because teenagers were cheap and would tolerate fryer oil and asphalt heat in exchange for a wage that didn't, in real terms, cover the gas to get there. Marcus had arranged it. He had found the listing, filled out the application for both of them, chosen the dates, the job, the commute, the girl who ran the bumper car booth, and the girl who ran the bumper car booth, who was the kind of girl Marcus has decided that summer he intended to marry. Cole had said yes the way Cole always said yes to Marcus, before he'd finished asking himself whether the answer was yes. The night before they were supposed to leave, Cole called it off. Marcus had the phone to his ear at the kitchen table. Klaus, reading in the adjacent room, heard the conversation the way he heard everything through the walls. Not the words, but the pressure change. The call lasted 4 minutes. When Marcus set the phone down, he did not move for a moment. Then he stood. Klaus heard him, but did not come in. He waited. Marcus appeared in the doorway. The face he was wearing was one Klaus had not seen on the boy before. It held the early architecture of a man's bitterness on it, and Klaus, who was an observant man, recognized the architecture from his own face in mirrors 20 years earlier, and from his father's face before that. He bailed, Marcus said. He was standing with one hand on the frame of the door. 2 months of planning, and the night before, he's staying home with his mom and his sisters. I told him we had an agreement. He said he was sorry. Klaus had a glass of water on the side table. I will never, Marcus said, forget how he screwed me over. No, Klaus said. You won't. Marcus turned and went to his bedroom, closed the door. Klaus sat in the chair for a long moment before he stood. He went to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water. He stood at the sink, and something arrived that he had not budgeted for. Not grief. He did not grieve the Nova boy's loyalty on Marcus's behalf, and not satisfaction, because satisfaction required a kind of investment he had not made. Something else, something without a category in the cipher. He was aware of it the way a man becomes aware of a sound he cannot locate. Present, sourceless, not resolving. He waited for it to identify itself so he could file it or discard it. It had not identified itself. After a while, it receded. He did not write it down. He drank his water and went back to his chair. He had understood, standing at that sink, what had just happened. The Nova boy had given his son a wound. The wound was the shape of a thing Klaus had been waiting 22 years to give his son. Give his son himself. The wound was at the door. Oh, the wound was the door through which Marcus could be brought in time into the structure. Because a boy who had been wounded by a friend would, given enough time and the right framing, accept a father's larger frame as the explanation for why the world had betrayed him in small ways. He would accept the larger frame the way a man accepted a coat that fit. Klaus drank his water. He waited 7 years before he began the conversation. He waited until Marcus had finished his bachelor's degree and came back to Culver City with the soft, cynical edge of a young man who had figured out that mediocrity was a story told to people who did not own the printing press. He waited until Marcus had taken his first job at a regional energy concern. He had begun to suspect accurately that the rate of his promotion had nothing to do with his work. He waited until the day Marcus, 24 years old, stood on the porch of the stucco house and asked his father a question Klaus had been waiting since the kitchen table evening to be asked. Dad, Marcus said, what is it you actually do? Klaus invited him inside. He took the leather notebook out of the fireproof box for the first time in Marcus's life. He poured 2 glasses of water. He sat down at the kitchen table, the same table on which Marcus had stood 7 years before, learning the architecture of his own bitterness. And he opened the notebook to a page somewhere in the front and turned it slowly so that his son could see. He said, I am going to tell you a story about your grandfather. Marcus sat down. The structure now had a name now. The structure had a son. Klaus, who spent his entire life preparing for this single conversation, allowed himself, for the first time in 24 years, to feel that long, patient work of his, for the first time in 22 years, to feel that the long, patient work of his line was, perhaps, beginning to come into its own time. He turned the page. He began. All right, that's the prequel. That is the entire prequel we read through yesterday and today. Let's check these comments here. Ahoy, mates. Ahoy. Hex T. Armstrong, how are you doing, buddy? All right, we have been reading for about an hour and a half. That is incredibly long. We might want to chop this into edits. If anyone wants to chop these edits into chapters for the playlist, that would be even better. Maybe that's something we'll do some AI later if we have time. But for now, that is the entire thing, and we will jump through our updates of the crypto side of things of this project. Let's go first, of course, to squirrelswap.pro. Shout out to Red Squirrel. Building cool things like the trade, the bot, claim, squirrels, his squirrel NFTs, which are just badass and actually have utility. NFT Nutters, which is his platform where we will start being able to see our darker matter NFT fuel cells. Here's the original fuel cells. They're right here with some of the art right there. And then, of course, the metadata missing for 9 and 10 and 11, but that's okay. That is okay because these are basically collector's items now. And then, of course, he's got tools, which includes an ecosystem, a portfolio where you can load a wallet and check out all the stuff on it. So this is a great way to see your assets that we used to see on. We see these assets on the bank, and now people are building out cool stuff just like this. Activity, status, docs. He's got so much going on. So squirrelswap.pro. Check it out. Old Man Bitcoin. Old Man Bitcoin is pumping all the way up to 64 grand. About half of what its all-time high is at this point. Ethereum is probably doing a little bumpy bump. Yeah, oh yeah, 1675. We're cooking now, boys. Cooking now. Interesting. Interesting. Max still, I mean, it kind of just bounced off the same level. We'll see if they finally take their boot off its neck and let it run. If you guys want to read the book or move it over to talk to text so that AI can read it to you, the link is in our Telegram, which if you go here, it'll be one of the pinned messages right here. If you just go to general and pinned messages, go back a bit. I should probably put it again here so people can find it. But you can also find it. Yeah, here's Rings of Est right there. Oh wait, it's the next one here. There it is. Let's copy the text. Let's paste it here in the bottom. And then we'll pin it again so that you guys can just come here and find it easily. And this will take you to the live public GitHub where you can click on, well, you can click on a lot of stuff there, but the book and the prequel and stuff are all there under TTS. All right, and then we also have Rings of Dust book where people are talking about how to read the book, and we can walk you through how to make AI read it for you. Check that out at t.me/anti-gravity project, or sorry, anti-gravity saga. And then agproject.io, here's our website, baby. It's our favorite website in the entire world. Let's go home. You right now have 9 days, 1 hour, and 57 minutes to mint your NFTs for the round one, for the first round. And that first round is going to last 11 days. And at the end of those 11 days, we're going to have jackpots paid out. We're going to have the treasury pay out some dust. I mean, very, very little the first round of the first season. But you guys are basically setting your place in getting paid. You're saving your place in line for all 66 rounds. So you will get paid out through all 3 seasons, all 66 rounds as the FOMO curve ramps up. We'll check that out in just a second. But before that, we need to do our 100 mints for round 1 because we are trying to get this this account right here, the Stream wallet, up to 1,000. Oh my goodness. We're trying to get this wallet up to 1,000 NFTs, so we have a very good chance of winning the lottery or the jackpot. The jackpot odds are 1 in 740, so I figure 1,000 is a pretty good chance of hitting that. So we're going to edit the gas feed. Hi, save, confirm. Right now you can see on the header that the gas is down at 467 K beats, so 467,000 beats. That's fairly low compared to what it was last week. It was usually around 500 to 600 last week when it was settled down. It went as high as like 20 million or something bananas for a while we were trying to deploy some of the contracts. Yeah, crazy. and we're waiting for the fireworks, which should show up in any second now, to congratulate us the on the minting. Any day now, any moment now. Every time, if I click off of this, it will confirm the second I click off of it. So I'm being patient. I'm waiting for the fireworks, and then we can go check and confirm that. Oh, look at this. Okay, not propagated on any public toll chain. Usually mean pull lag. Wait another minute. If it hasn't landed, your wallet's RPC is likely dropping the broadcast. Rabby settings, more, modify RPC, pulse chain, gamma IO. I'm pretty sure this is set to gamma, actually. How do we check our RPC settings in Internet Money? Go to settings, seed phrase, wallet. This guy's this MetaMask. No, it's got to be somewhere general, about, log out, theme, about. That's the app version. Theme, nope. Okay, it says waiting for confirmation again. Log out, choose currency, wallet connect, interject apps. Is there a way to add the network to this? Let's see here. Oh, there we go. Networks. Pulse chain. Is there some way to check out pulse chain right here? Add network, remove network, manage. Let's just click add network. I was hoping this would show the other one. We could edit it. No, it's not. Either way, I'm pretty sure it's set to either Gamma or the public node through Internet Money. I would go ask for Telegram, but like I said, the second I leave this page, they'll mint and we'll miss the fireworks. Come on, baby. Let's go. I'll just move this over here. And we'll go to Internet Money's Telegram. And we'll say, what is the default RPC set to for Internet Money? Internet Money. What is the default RPC for Internet Money set to on chain? And I bet you anyway, someone will usually, they're very fast and very active in Internet Money, Telegram. So I should get one there. I'm imagining it's either the public one or it's the Gamma one. There we go. Minted. Fireworks. It went through. Whichever RPC it's using, we'll have to check that. I'll let you guys know when I get that answer from Telegram. But we minted those, so the next thing we want to do is go to our fuel cell farm. So remember, you play by minting, farming, and getting paid. So we minted, now we're going to go to farming, or click on the fuel cell farm tile. We're sitting at Navigator. We still have 852 more fuel cells to achieve Admiral. So we are an Admiral right now so far. Let's check the supply real quick while we're here. 2,222,222 is the fixed cap. 67% of that is still in this FOMO curve right here that we see. 48,000 being paid out during season one, the first 22 rounds, and then 241,000 or 5x in round season two. Those that would be round 23 to 44, and then in round three or season three, round 45 to 66. That's where 1.29 million darker are going to be paid out right there in season three. So we're holding our spot in line, and we will get paid through all of these as long as we don't deplete and burn our NFT to get the money, to get the darker matter out of it. Mystery boxes at 9%, jackpots at 2.9, 188 bonus at 2.6. Yeah, interesting. Interesting. So as these get minted, all of the mint, none of the mint actually goes into the treasury. It actually goes into the jackpot, the 180-day bonus, the EDI pool, and the team. So where we used to have a treasury that just got bigger and bigger and bigger, we now start with a 67% in the treasury. And you'll notice that the circulating supply went from 18.1% to 18% from yesterday to today. So the circulating supply is shrinking already. We'll see how much more of that shrinks as the whales mint. And then you can also see that there are 145,149 darker matter fuel cells minted playing the game right now. So that's pretty cool. And none of them are staked because you can't stake for another 20 days. So look forward to that. If we scroll down here, we can see that now we had 500 fuel cells. Now we have 600 fuel cells. It shows some projected dark down there. It also shows at the current price right now that we paid $248, and at the end of the 66 rounds, we should, at today's price, it'd be $318. But we can of course go to all-time high, which was $1. That changes the projection from $700 to $900, or we can put in some moon math, and moon math is fun. I always like to throw in a couple numbers here because you never know what insanity can happen during a bull market, and that changes things considerably. If you guys want to play around there, highly recommend it. Now, after round one is finished, we can come here and then we'll be able to click. Well, first thing we want to do is we want to go to the jackpot to see if we have won any jackpots. But once you claim or sacrifice your jackpot, you are given the opportunity to stake. So the staking doesn't work unless it makes sure that you don't have any jackpots that you're going to lose. So that's kind of the order of operations is wait for the round to end, check your jackpots, claim or sacrifice, then come here to fuel cell farms where you can click manage, and at that point you can do a whole bunch of stuff. You can stake them for 33 days for the 10x bonus from the treasury, from the FOMO curve. You can stake them for 180 days, which is 100x bonus from the FOMO curve, and liquid darker payouts every 11 days for the foreseeable future. You can end the stake that you've made. The reason you might want to end the stake is because you might be selling or transferring the stake. When the NFTs are staked, they can't be transferred or sold on places like SquirrelSwap.pro or Harry Labs. So that's why you'd want to unstake them. Or if you're tired of making lots of money, you could unstake them. And then of course there's sacrifice. Now, I don't see a lot of people sacrificing fuel cells for quite a while because you only get the value of the darker inside of them. And as we saw, the first season of payouts from the FOMO curve are trickle, right? They're very little. I mean, right now we have 377 darker that are expected to be paid out. Let's see here if I can get it on that tiny little thing. There we go. 733. Okay, so we've got 733 darker matter that are going to be paid out to, at this point, 145,149. So we'll call it 149, 145, 150. So right now, without more people minting, you are projected to get 0.005 darker paid to each of these um, NFTs, which is, again, dust. Now, the move, obviously, if you plan on sacrificing in the future, is to stake it for 180 days. And then once that 180 days kicks in, which will be around round 5 or 6, you're going to get it's going to get bumped up to 100x. So at that point, the FOMO curve will now be paying upwards of. See, and this is the whole point of going into this and thinking ahead and minting so heavily up front. Usually, you want to save some for later, and you definitely do want to save some for later. But minting early actually is a huge advantage, because by the time round 8 comes around, there's 1,000 darker being paid out, and if you have 100x the payout of other players at that point, that's when it might start accumulating to a serious amount that is worth sacrificing to the void. So I see a lot of sacrifices happening maybe at the end of season 1, but even then I don't see a lot of people, getting this right. In fact, I mean, let's look at the whole thing. Let's say nobody mints any further, and we have let's see here. No, I didn't want to do that. Go away. Go away. Jiminy Christmas. Okay, so let's say that nobody else mints and nobody stakes. You've got 48,000 divided by 145,000, 150. So if nothing changes from here out, no one stakes, you're looking at getting a third of your investment back, 33%. That's pretty interesting. Now, obviously, if you want more than that, you want to stake at least for 33 days, if not 180 days. And your portion is going to be larger because you've made that commitment and you've shown that incredible patience in crypto, which is probably more rare than green candles right now. People do not have patience for anything in crypto right now. So, yeah, I would say that maybe towards the end of season 2, you'll have enough darker matter accumulated in the fuel cells. Maybe at that point, you'll have 10 or 12 darker, depending on your patience and staking. And that might be something worth throwing into the void for some EDI payments, but maybe not. I mean, it depends on minting, and it depends on the bot tax filling that EDI pull up. Speaking of which, let's go check out our get paid stuff going on. We have 196 winners that will be drawn at the end of season 1, round 1, and we have 65,000 jackpot that could be hitting the market, which would be, look at this. This is how insane this project is. At today's price of 65,317 darker, and someone were trying to if everyone went to market sell those, that would be $26,000 of sell pressure on a token that at this present time has $2,000 of liquidity, give or take, probably less with the prices dumping in PulseRay. Yeah, so I mean, like, obviously that would just decimate everything. It'll be really interesting to see how much of that $26,000 worth of darker, or how many of those 65,000 darker are sacrificed versus how many are claimed. And the ones that are claimed, it'll be very interesting to see who remints, who provides liquidity, and who cashes out. Because, I mean, 33, if you win the hit the jackpot, 333 times 0.4. I mean, I'm sure someone's going to do it just to see if it works, but that's $133 at today's prices without the bull market return. So $133 that's a freaking stack of cash in crypto right now. That'll get you mugged in a park in PulseChain right now. Mm. PulseRay chick made me pancakes and they're delicious. Anyways, yeah, this is really interesting. Then we go over to our Eat pool, which has $3,481, and I believe 20% of this pays out. So 20% of this would be $680. So what do you think the people that get the first payout of this one, and of course it's going to grow in the next 20 days, but what do you guys think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to regift it, put it back in? Do you think they're just going to sit on their hands? Do you think they're going to provide liquidity? I don't know. I'm just like, there's a lot of things that could happen here, especially depending on how many people sacrifice to the void when they hit the jackpot. So there you go. There you go. And then of course the 180-day bonus pool. This one's at 58,000. It only pays 3.69% to all the people in it every 11 days, forever. And this thing's going to fill up for Jiminy Christmas. 180 days starting in 9 days, so 189 days. That's when people will finally qualify for this. So everything that's minted in the next 189 days in the project is going to put 40% of all those mints will going to go in here. So it's definitely going to be a lot higher as well. All right. And then the jackpot will depend on how many people sacrifice and roll this back into the next jackpot and how many people claim. But yeah, right now it's sitting pretty nice, thick, and juicy. So, how to play. Mint, farm, get paid. Just like that. There's 3 easy steps to this. And as I said, you can see your balance. You can see which wallet you're connected to. You can click buy now, which of course takes you right now to Switch.win, who just dropped some new features yesterday on theirs. Yeah, this you can use this aggregator here to buy darker. I believe they've added darker to their list. Wait, is this switch now? Let's do this. I think you have to actually do that. There we go. So let's see if darker's in here. Looking up darker, it says no tokens found. Let's put in the address that's here at the top. Let's paste this in. And I might reach out to these homies and be like, hey, fellas, y'all wanna add our token? No tokens found. Okay, I've got to connect a wallet. That's a problem. Connect wallet. Let's connect internet monies. And then we'll tell, what in the, we just signed into internet money. Internet money, you need to chill, bro. Yeah, we'll connect it. Okay, so now this actually might show it inside my wallet because I have some in my wallet here. But yeah, let's go back to here. Oh, we're on Ethereum. We need to go to Pulse Chain. That might have been the entire problem. Yeah, switch to Pulse Chain. There we go. Okay, so now let's try looking up darker up here. It does show it added. Oh, that's the old one. So Control V. Oh, Control V. There we go. Yeah, it is showing darker matter right there. I'm gonna have to. It says darker matter is a tax token with a 10% selfie. That's true. I don't think they have room for the big paragraph underneath explaining that the community doesn't pay it, but that's okay for now because we know that we're not paying it if we're part of the community, and in the future, if you own 10 or more fuel cells, you'll also be tax exempt. So yeah, that is for the bots, targeting the bots. But either way, I think it is on here natively, which is great. Great. And then of course here, 144,000 last night, 145,000 today. We got Monster Boy 9 with all the nines. We've got some crazy fanatic at 15,000. Another Banana Boy at 6716. This one I don't recognize this one. 5,000 there, 3,000 there. And here's the thing is I don't know if Pink Miswell has read the game theory or just like threw 1,000 in to get some started. So I might see if we can reach out and see if he understands. He might want to drop half his stack there. Another very, very cool influencer from the group reached out and was like, wait, don't I want to hold some for later? And I'm like, yeah, you do want to hold some for later, but right now, if you're planning on farming these, minting now is a great opportunity to get that 180 days under your belt. So let's check the prices here. I think they're around 40 cents, 42 cents here. Let's check the price of actuators at 00038, and it looks like it's doing a nice bounce off this bottom here, trading a bottom. PulseX up 6%, all the way up here to, is that fives? Yeah, 5045. Dr. Rat Pulse is right around, is that 6 zeros? Nope. Yep. 6060. Dr. Doge is at half a penny still, making its resistance and defiance to the market. Dark and Dr. Doge, the original Dark is down to 8 cents per token. If you guys are trying to still dump on that bad boy, you can see this insanity right here. There's $135 of liquidity there, so good luck. Hex is up 2.5%. This was the funny joke that Salmi made, where he's like, and just like that, Pulse Chain started its own bull run. Oh, and see, I looked at it, and so now it's being sold down. Oh, this is why we can't have nice things, fellas. That's why. I mean, maybe it's someone who picked them up back here, and now they're in profit, but I don't know. Not a lot of people picked up Pulse down here, and I would say I would assume that these wicks are most likely OA buys, just to put it mildly. That's my guess. Pink Miswell, you can get a million Pink Miswell for $21 right now. It has whoa. Okay, I figured out where some of that Pink Miswell stack went. We've got 4.7k in liquidity paired with Pink Miswell. So there's a lot more liquidity here. So those of you that actually want to like come in and dump a bunch of money, or sell a stack or buy a stack, it's going to be pushed through this pair most likely at some point, because Pink Miswell also has, where's it at? Pink Miswell has 4.7k of liquidity wrapped with Pulse, and then it also has, the same amount. It's really interesting that they're tied together here. Oh, that's Wrap Pulse. That's not the one. Where is it? Darker Pink Miswell. Or no, maybe I'm looking at the wrong one. Where's Darker Matter and Pink Miswell? Here it is. Oh, I was wrong. I thought maybe the Pink Miswell had added a ton of liquidity. They haven't yet, so there's $174 of liquidity here with Pink Miswell. You still get $21. Although I would expect this to be a very thick liquidity pair because of the way that we have enjoyed using the Pink Miswell token, sending it in honor to our Pink Miswell benevolent helper here very, very well. Yeah, look at that. Like, someone went and got some Pink Miswell and just cranked the price from, it was like $12 for a million to $20 for a million. And that was just in the last day. Like, look at the daily. So Pink Miswell, you might want to grab some Pink Miswell, 21 million for I'm sorry, a million for 21 bucks. Interesting, and like I said, we'll probably see this get pretty dang thick because very few people own pink as well, and very few people own darker, so they're great tokens to hold up against sell pressure in black market, in black swan markets. Let's see here. Here's darker and E-Dye. It's got $676 of liquidity paired. It's at 41 cents. That one's looking pretty healthy, pretty good. This is where every time people mint, if you go to the 15-minute chart, you can see these are minters minting a ton of tokens. In fact, you can see these ones right here. This is that big 99999 well that just minted the living hell out of the price. And then here's some community members saying, thank you, sir, may I have another? Thank you, sir, may I have another? And I don't know how many more mints there are going to be, but once the mints are done, for this round anyways, you'll see how many people are actually filling their bags for the following rounds. Actuator in dark has $122 liquidity. It started at $200 before the price of both of those went down. You can get it for 41 cents here. You can get Darker and Dr. Doge. You can get that for 42 cents here. Sometimes there's one that's like 4 or 5 cents cheaper than everyone else. Darker and Neon. Shout out to Nexion Ecosystems, a very cool site here, friends of ours. They've their token's looking pretty cool right now, and you can get it for 39 cents over here. So you can get a discount if you buy with Neon right now. And then this is the E-Dye PulseX. Here's the P-Dye. There is $44 of liquidity tied with P-Dye, and P-Dye is at a tenth of a penny right now. You can get it for 41 cents over there. And then Darker and Wrapped ETH is sitting at $482, which is quite interesting because, ETH has been clubbed over the head like a baby seal. You get 41 cent Darker over here. But if you go over here, it's Weth. If you look at Weth's price, Weth is actually not doing great against Darker after that crazy dump. Although if it pumps, it'll be interesting to see. If I think that, excuse me, I think we saw some of this liquidity added here. If it drops again, we might see some more liquidity added. Interesting pair, though. I mean, eventually I believe that Ethereum's will quit being stomped into the dirt. We have Gray's currency with 50 bucks tied to it right here. Very interesting. Gray's currency is fighting the noise right there. It's a very young pair. And you can get it for 35 cents over here. So those guys are looking at buying some cheaper dark. There's 48 bucks of liquidity, which, if you got a small order, probably get it in here. But yeah, 35 cents, baby. That is crazy. Yeah, we already went over the website, over those. I think that's about it, kids. Like, it's been good. It's been good. Let's check our comments here. Logos and tax details automatically display for all tokens. Squirrel Swap has Darker added. Let's check that out. Go back over here to... No, that's not where we wanted it. That's where you can vote for Richard Hart to be on Joe Rogan. Right there. Let's see here. Oh, that's where I was replying. Okay. Squirrel Swap. I'm gonna go to trade. Pulse. And we can just scroll down to the D's, right? Actually, it might not be alphabetical. There's a bunch of darkers on here. Let's see which one has there you go. So the correct one right here with $173 dollars in the wallet, that one has the new darker. This is the older darker iterations. Wow, it's got $9 of the old darker in it, which it shouldn't, but it does. So we'll have to see if we can pull that out. Either way, very good work. Good work, Squirrel. Like I say, he's always building amazing stuff here, and big friend of the community, and he's also written into the book, and he's actually 2 characters in the book. So we'll get to that. That'll be a lot of fun. But other than that, let's end the stream. Let's play Korean Investors Rap Dark Matter here with the visuals added. Some of them from Red Squirrel and Hex T. Armstrong and Hex Glenn and other people from the community added to Korean Investors Rap, which is still about AG Project, which is still the same name. And he says the Dark Matter token, but the Telegram is the same and the brand's the same. So it still works, and it's one of my favorite songs. So we're going to end on that. I might do some reading again later. I don't know, we made it all the way through the prequel, which is, I didn't know if we were going to do that. But we'll keep doing these, and maybe we'll edit them into chapters or shorter bits so people can just listen to a 5-minute clip or a 10-minute clip, because listening to a 2-hour clip is a lot, unless you're insane. So you guys matter. What you do matters. You have an insane amount of value, just being you. And I think you guys are the best damn community in crypto, hands down. PulseWave 5, I've been reaching out to you, buddy. We got more art to make. Good to see you.
Hey, we need his address.
Oh yeah, PulseWave 5, give us your address.
And your shirt size.
Give us your shirt size and your address. We've been waiting to send swag to you for a while now.
Hopefully he's not large or extra large.
Yeah,
or
hopefully you're a medium, small, or a triple X. All right, love you guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Ciao.
I'm talking AGP, anti-gravity project. I respect, staying true to the tech. We got the evil address and the pink Miss Will. Got the dark matter token going up, I can tell. Hey, I can tell this is start of something fresh. Shout out Hex Revision and on the Hex, yes. I confess, Hexicans don't stress, cause as a community we want the So tell me, are you in, or tell me, are you out? Do you want to win, or do you chase the clout? What is this really about? The treasury and lottery. If you meant dark tokens, you can get a part of it. So how does it work? Let me explain. First you buy the dark token, now you're in the game. Then you mint the dark and get a fuel cell. That's an NFT, one that earns yield. As long as you have it, it feels like magic. But if you vaporize the NFT, that's tragic. So most think crypto is a game. Are you here for the fame, or here to make a name? See, Hexicans reign, we create our own lane. I thought I told you, we the new financial gain. AGProject.io with the flow. And if you know what I know, then you know what I know. That's how it go. Something like to support the team, the dream. Public service announcement, t.me/anti-gravity saga is the Telegram. Tap in. It's for y'all. I'm talking AGP, anti-gravity project. I respect, staying true to the tech. We got the evil address and the pink Miss Will. Got the dark matter token going up, I can tell.